Hey everybody, and welcome to another Indie Hour. We are back with a whole new theme. We have been jumping around. We had, what was it? Last week was fantasy skirmish games. The week before that, we had zombie apocalypse. I'm even losing what we had the week before that. I think it was some kind of like horror thing. We've been running the whole gamut of genres, but this week the patrons have picked a fantastic miniature line from Spectre Miniatures for near future combat. And this is a sort of like history agnostic. They call it the sandbox, so wherever conflicts are basically happening. And it's both like periods and forces agnostic, but based upon their model line. It gives you a huge amount of options for customization of your elements, from like one squad of guys against maybe like a drug cartel, up to like some like people holding hostages, a rogue government, and allows you to play kind of those like Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy-esque engagement, some Call of Duty shit, basically, is the whole goal here. It's backed up by a very cool model line, and the book is available from Spectre Miniatures in PDF and hardcover for, I think it's $70 Canadian. I think it's $50 US. I bought it in Canadian, in digital, so that I could have it and show you guys. I'm pairing it today with two other games. Now, Rogue Warriors was actually a patron pick as well. It is a modern warfare skirmish game. It's available for, I think it's £8.95 or £9.95. Basically, it's $20 Canadian when I bought it, when the conversion went through. And the idea with this one is it's a more of a Call of Duty level, so it's a single team, 4 models. Think of like the rescue team from Predator, right? We've got Dutch, Dylan, and then like Jesse Ventura and Billy with his knife. You pick a special class for each of them, and they go through and they have their sort of like adventure trying to do a specific mission with tons of missions with the mission generator. And there's also a lot of free content for it, solo and co-op rules. And once again, it's designed to be specifically period agnostic, where it's basically from modern firearms on. So anytime from like World War II, World War I, all the way up into like near future and like post-future, where you have all kinds of cool engagements. And then finally, I've picked as a third option, just as a bonus option here, our own patron, Dan Laporte's War Eternal. And I don't have a digital of this. There isn't a digital that's available, but I got this last year. It's a 1.0. It's dedicated, I think, to his dad, Mike Laporte. And I wanted to show it off too, because it's much in the same vein as Rogue Warriors. It is a sort of modern 20th century combat game where you can pick your era. It has all kinds of cool hazards, and it's very much in the same sort of line as these two games. So I figured I'd throw it up as an extra bonus option, because I quite enjoyed it, and it's a very competently written first edition for his first game he ever wrote. So giving it a shout out. So let's jump in, and let's look at some miniatures from Spectre. Now, Spectre does all kinds of cool stuff. They've worked with other companies before. I think Ben from Black Site Studio, Molev mentioned, did the layout for the Spectre rulebook, and there is a ton of miniatures available here. You can see here, like, for instance, the Edison as one of the evil gang cars. You have the Edison that can drive around. The description for this thing is hilarious. It's an all-new electric pickup truck designed for those who yearn for the futuristic design of the 70s and have the money to make those dreams a reality. It does look a lot like the Tango and Cash truck. And then you've got all kinds of cool things like, these new SAS miniature line that they've done. So you can see here the aesthetic very much is like current to near future. They also do some horror stuff, which is really cool. They do a new like line of sort of Lovecraftian horrors. And they have some additional rules for playing with these as well, because, I mean, why not do Roaring Twenties? I love these urban hybrids, these like Dickensian fishmen, right, from Innsmouth. And their line is designed to be all kinds of stuff, from along to elements like tanks, right? So you can get a BMP 1AM available in resin from them. And then for their horror games, things like even older style sedan cars, a 1930s Ford sedan. So tons of options, but the game itself is miniature agnostic, right? So you're not requiring their miniatures. The goal here is they love designing this stuff, and they wanted to make a rule set to reflect it. So Spectre operations here. This is the digital PDF. You can see here, this is because I'm logged in. That's my digital download. It does come watermarked, so you guys are all going to end up seeing my email address, which is fine because that email address is in all these videos anyway. You grab it, and then you can see here, where's the actual, when I go to the rules section, and show off Spectre Ops. There's a variety of additional content available for it too. So this one, yeah, this was the $68 Spectre Operations core rulebook in PDF and a little synopsis of it. You also get downloads you can order for a quick reference guide for $4, and your roster sheets for $6 as well. But those I think come actually printed. They're not downloads, because those are also available, I think, as other downloads. So you get extra rules here, and these are free. So solo and non-player element rules for playing against like the hordes, extra guns, the Baba Yaga. So if you want a John Wick miniature, you get Baba Yaga rules. And then force builders for things like the law enforcement, the criminal elements, Russian army, EOD specialists, like so you can have your bomb defusal guides, the dude from the Hurt Locker, basically. And these are available for free to add onto your core rulebook. Now the core rulebook itself, let's jump in, is 140-ish pages, and is designed to be like broken down into sections. So the introduction, like what is the game and how is it designed to be played? The core rules for the game, so how to use momentum. The game's a little Infinity-y, where your force will generate on both sides at the start of an activation. You have attacker, defender, will generate a pool of momentum, and you'll spend that on elements to take actions. Your elements will also gain stress over the course of those actions, which can impede their ability to be operational. But there's no limit to how much things they can do over the course of the turn. Then we have an expansive set of like weapon profiles and equipment, because obviously the conceit of this game is it's modern combat. And a lot like people who enjoy mountaineering or backpacking or any other motorcycles, cars, the gear is the detail. So they get really deep into things like vehicles, equipment, and gear. And there's tons of different like sections in here for that kind of stuff. And we're not going to spend too much time on like the advanced rules for things like riot shields and stuff like that. We're just going to go through the core rules here, because again, I've noticed that it's real easy for me to get excited about rule sets and then get really into the minutia, when what I should be doing is focusing on the overall feeling of the game. And then finally, you're going to get 5 scenarios in the core rulebook and the force builders for your lists. And the force builders is designed to be flexible enough that, again, you can kind of shove the period around from like the 70s. You can do like a Red Dawn up into like, near future combat, sort of that Call of Duty, like, what was the Future War one? The one with Jon Snow in it? It doesn't matter. But that kind of an era, right? Where you're if I could get weird and be like you could do Moonraker. You could do 1970s future as well if you wanted to. And the game doesn't care about that. The game cares more about the sort of type of equipment that you're using, and not getting too specific on like the model and make of your gun. So let's talk about what do you need to play. And the game has a nice little description of all this. So it's D10 based. And interestingly enough, when you see the stat block, you're trying to roll over your stats. So if you think of them as GW stats, like where your stats are presented as you're required to hit roll, typically that's how the stats are presented. So a high stat in this game is bad, and it's out of 10. A low stat is going to be good. 1's always fail, 10's always succeed. You're measuring in inches. Play surfaces could be 2x2 up to 4x4, depending on the number of elements that you're using. And an element is like a squad of guys. But in like the skirmish version, if you break the game smaller, an element could be like a single specialist, a single like, special forces operative or something like that. Or Baba Yaga, or bomb diffuser, or whatever you want it to be. You need some terrain. The scenario is going to dictate if there's any like special terrain elements, and then you want your cards, paper, and pen. Element cards are they're very much like the GW data slate that you'll fill out when you design your force. Line of sight. This game does use, so maneuvering is very important miniature by miniature in this game. And the closest comparison I could make is this is kind of a 90s Necromunda style line of sight game. You can only see 90 degrees. You're facing super important, so you need to mark like the front of your base, and your field of fire is going to dictate like if you can return fire. There's certain things they're going to be able to do in reaction by spending momentum for your momentum pool that will be dictated upon your field of fire. So like if you go first during the turn, you want to make sure you're ending your fields of fire appropriately, because when your opponent then goes, your reactions will be based on what you can see, right? And your training level and stuff as well. Measuring is point to point. Distances are measured to and from the center of the model. When engaging an element that has models in 2 different engagement ranges, when making an engagement action, use the greater distance. And then tests are roll a d10, get a result from 1 to 10. 1's always fail, 10's always succeed. You're usually trying to roll higher than your stat. Elements, like we said, there's no points in this game. Elements are kind of your slot selection. If you've watched the GMG review for Blackout, which is another sort of like near future combat game that we did recently with me and Rob, It's kind of the same idea where sort of the tougher, better train your element is, the less models are in that. But instead of using points, it kind of uses like a forced slot creation. So when you create an element, its training level will dictate how many models you get at. This is used in other games like Saga, where you'll get like between 4, 8, and 12 warriors, depending upon the training level of your warriors. And it's a convenient way of like not having points, but kind of still having points because everyone roughly has the same amount of trained miniatures on the table when you start playing the game. And then we can look at the stat block. Okay, so movement, it's just how far you move in inches. And per momentum that you spend. Ballistics is what you're rolling higher than to hit. So like this guy's a veteran. He's got a ballistics of 5. The dice roll can be modified by various modifiers like aiming and stuff like that can add to your roll. Being in cover could reduce your roll. And you're trying to roll higher than the number, equal or higher. Your awareness, this shows your situational awareness of the element, allowing them to quickly recognize and react to your potential threats. It's kind of your armor save. And then your stress value is going to be thing that you accrue over the course of the game that can allow you to act and react. And your stress value is also used during CQB. So the lower your stress value, the better. The higher stress value, when you look at civilians later on, when you look at like sort of like the training stat blocks, they have a stress of 8, which means they're not very good in melee and they freak out pretty easy. Criminals might have a 5, conscripts a 6, militia, the better trained would have a 5. And then, so those are untrained troops. And when you do orders, the line between trained and untrained becomes important because certain miniatures that are untrained, they can be skilled, right? Like militia guys are skilled, but they're not necessarily trained in like group tactics and stuff like that the same way. They're trained in how to use their weapons and fight. Because they're untrained, they can't get like the bonus parts of certain actions and reactions. Same with, so a good example would be a return fire. Return fire is I'm not the active player, but someone's shooting at me. I can spend momentum for my pool. So very often, if you've already gone during the turn, you might want to save a little bit of momentum because then your guys can react when someone shoots them later on. It's almost like an Overwatch mechanic. If you are untrained, you just shoot from where you were at the turn. Trained miniatures can actually move an inch and change facing before they react to get in a better position to reaction fire. So like it's little advantages on certain things that the trained and untrained split will do over the course of the game. We have your cohesion distance. This is another example of that. So trained cohesion is just 5 inches between another model in the unit. Untrained have to kind of glob up. So it's, again, kind of if you want a parallel in like pop culture gaming, we're talking about like the 40K difference with being within like a 10-man squad has to all be within an inch or something like that of 2 models in the squad versus trained guys. They just have to have another model in range. And then situational awareness, it's basically avoiding being shot, so it's your armor save. The idea here is like, right, this is modern combat. If you get shot, you're getting hurt. You might have like an armor plate in your vest and stuff like that you're carrying around, but there's a very good chance you're getting winged, you're getting taken an action, just getting shot in the arm, getting your hand blown off or something. And so situational awareness is your ability to just avoid getting hit altogether, right? So accurate fire is great, but if you're behind a wall, that accurate fire is going to get hit into the wall instead of you. Lovely art and layout. And then we're getting the core rules. And this is where we're going to finish our overview of the game. I'll skim through the additional content just so you can see kind of what it looks like. But by page 32, we're kind of done the core mechanics. All right, so there's 2 phases of the game, actions and sit reps. Actions are both sides go, like the attacker and defender both go through their total momentum pool, acting and reacting. So the active player is spending momentum to act with their models. Every time you spend a momentum, they can do an action. You typically, for turns 1 and 2, get a single momentum for free for the entire group. And then every active element in the table gives you 2 more momentum for them to do something. When you spend momentum on an element, they take an action, right? So that's why an element has 2 momentum, because typically you could move and shoot, or you could move and move over the course of the game. And then the free one can be used however you want. All momentum can be used however you want, but your generation is based on how many elements you have. Sit rep is when you are going to be determining sort of what your sort of like current end of the game situation is. So there's an objective on the table. It's did you win? And if you're escalating an objective, you calculate like how many points you've earned and stuff like that. And there is a basic core mission in here. It's called direct engagement. It's just to line up and fight. All right, so momentum. So momentum is, and the best example I can give of for people who've played more mainstream games, it is your orders and infinity. You can see that on turns 1 to 3, you get 1 momentum, and then you get 2 momentum for every element. You get 1 momentum if you're suppressed instead. Basically, the idea is you're spending a momentum to remove suppression, and suppression is based upon your resiliency. and then 0 momentum for each pinned element. A force will never generate less than 1 momentum every turn, regardless of modifiers. You always get to do something, because in turns 1 to 3, you're going to get a single momentum. And you spend it for everything. Momentum is generated by every element and all forces at the start of every game turn. This means that elements that use the rally action to remove suppression and or pin tokens will not generate their full momentum until the following turn, because you might have to do that as an order later on once you're pinned and suppressed to get more momentum later on. Each element in standard generates 2 momentum, and like you said, if you're suppressed, you get 1. If you are routed or destroyed, you get 0, and of course, if you are pinned, you get 0 as well. Some scenarios escalations will allow you to deploy reinforcements onto the battlefield. They'll always generate and use their own momentum for the purposes they'll be classified as independent force. The turn they arrive, again, a lot like Infinity, they use their own orders to do their own thing, and they'll have a separate pool just for that turn when they arrive. Using momentum will be spent by elements to perform actions. Each element in your force can be selected to perform actions in any order and may be selected to perform actions once per turn, excluding reactions. You do not need to assign momentum to elements before selecting them to perform actions. You just keep doing it until you say they're done. Now, that's the one difference between this and something like Infinity. You can't go back to them. You can give them as much momentum as you want to do things and push them forward and have them take actions, but you can't repeat an action, and you also can't come back to them later on. Some weapons, for example, may restrict movement or be unable to make an engagement action if maneuver action is performed. Each action costs a single point of momentum, but setting additional momentum to perform the action will often give benefits to the action, usually in the form of extra dice. Each individual action may not be performed in repetition. For example, an element cannot make an engagement action, then another engagement action. They must use an action in between, but you could engage twice during a turn. You don't need to spend all your momentum. It may be wise to reserve some to use as reactions and enemy actions to save for when your opponent's going. I suppose your opponent may also spend momentum to react with reaction actions later on, like return fire. And here's the core action. So maneuver, move, engagement, which is take some shots, fire support. Now, this is a trained action. Like I said, that matters again. The engaging element may spend a momentum to gain fire support from another element in their force. The element is lending fire and must be able to also make an engagement action against the target element. When lending fire support, the element may combine their engagement action with that of the engaging element. Reactions may only target the engaging element, but not any elements lending fire support. So, like, if you have 2 units that can both see somebody, you can spend an additional momentum, right, to gain fire support. So I walk over, I'm engaging with the active unit, I spend another one, they also start shooting at the same time. So it's kind of a neat, like, focus fire thing between multiple units at the same time. Assault lets you get into CQB. Rally, roll 1 dice for each point of stress the element has. Any score of that dice that's equal or over the current stress value of the element will be a success. For each success, reduce the element stress by 1 point. If the element has a sergeant, 1 dice is automatically a success. Each additional momentum spent will add an extra dice to the test. So like you saw there, the civilians, when they start to panic and get stressed, because if they hit 10, I think they run. That's a problem because they need 10s to succeed to even reduce their stress. And they won't have any sergeants around to shout at them to get them to panic. So some units will just, like, untrained units will just start to panic and, like, run away. Regroup. This action used by an element that's lost cohesion. Each model in the element make a maneuver to get back in cohesion. So if, like, you lose models through shooting that take you out of cohesion, you have to regroup first. Any stress that was gained by being out of cohesion is removed as long as the cohesion is then established after that maneuver. And go to ground. You can hug the ground. You get +2 awareness when making situational awareness rolls. +2 to your save. It's cover saves, basically. Breaching allows you to, like, bust through doors, and then embarking and disembarking lets you get in and out of vehicles that are transports. And you can also capture. Capture is a neat action because it allows you to basically force guys to surrender and take them hostage. But of course, then all the models in the element are restrained and may not perform any actions. The captive element is now considered part of the element that performed the enemy capture. So basically, they join your squad, and this can result in the captive element being hit intentionally or unintentionally during an engagement. So they might get killed during a firefight. If multiple momentum using this action, the element must make a stress test for every point of momentum used. If any of the tests are failed, the element's then captured. A captive element will make maneuver actions, embark and disembark with their captors. They'll also restrict some actions the captor has in the following ways. You can only use 2 points of momentum to maneuver because they're slowing you down. For every model that's a captive, a model in the capture element may only make engagements with a sidearm because you have to basically, like, you have to shoulder your rifle and use your sidearm because your hands on somebody's back, basically pushing them around. And if the captives fail a stress test from the engagement action, the captives remain stationary and go prone as they drop to the floor because they freak out when you get shot. And then reaction. So return fire. right? That allows you to shoot back if someone shoots you. Snapshot. This reaction is used to do Overwatch. So if someone moves nearby, you can snapshot them. And then trained ones are things like go to ground and break contact to get away from CQB. And component actions, breach and clear, bounding fire. These are like bonuses. They can be taken only by trained elements. They require particular training to perform. They are usually comprised of 2 more actions that are combined. So like breach and clear is a breach followed by an engagement. Bounding fire is an engagement followed by a maneuver. So like shoot and then get out of the way. But they count as a single action for like triggering other things. And then escalations. Most forces have access to assets available to them that are not present at the table. It's like close air support, mortar fire, quick reactions forces, or like ISTAR. Each force will either select which engagements are available, or which escalations are available each turn, and at which level they're in their operation. So when you build your force, you might pick them. And then you get an O-tempo chart, so like you get to file your request to bring them in. And during the sit-rep phase, your commander can attempt to escalate the situation. At this time, you may spend any of your momentum that you didn't spend and add additional dice to the escalation pool, and spend 1 momentum that's not a single additional dice. Roll your dice, and each result of 7 or more after modifiers will be a success. For every success, consult the O-tempo chart and see what has escalated to. So on no successes, chain of commands just doesn't do your request. If you get 1 success, you get a level 1 access to your assets. Level 2, the situations become volatile. And it's basically how willing are they to spend money to send people to come in to help you. And then if you get 4 successes, then all assets become available. So every turn during the sit rep phase, you're going to try to like escalate the situation to try and get more stuff to come out to get to like come and help basically for your side to win. And then reinforcements. A very common escalation is the arrival of reinforcements. After this escalation is awarded, reinforcements will arrive at a random time from a successful request. Roll a d10 to determine when they arrive. On a 1 to 5, they start the next turn. 6 to 10, 2 turns away. And then we get into like just the description of the core rules. I'm not going to spend too much time on like maneuvering, but I will talk about engagements real fast because it's just shooting. It's as simple as I talked about. Your weapons may dictate some stuff, but you're going to select an element to shoot, spend momentum on the engagement, determine the range modifiers to use for who's far away, and engaging element rolls for the accurate fire. It's trying to roll higher than your ballistics. In CQB, it's the same thing, except you're using your stress level. And then you make a engaging element rolling for situations. That's your saves. Then roll for lethality. And then the target element makes a stress test afterwards to see if they gain any stress. So if you equal or exceed your ballistics value, you get a shot that's a hit. Any dice that are lower are miss, and they have no effect unless they're like an AoE weapon. They might scatter. And it's very common for an element to have more than 1 weapon type carried by each fighter. It's important to measure each of these weapons separately to determine the range modifiers for each weapon. So make sure that your guns are all doing different ones, then just do them as pools. Or do different colored dice, they said, to roll for it. Situational awareness test. So this is trying to avoid fire. For each accurate shot from an engagement, the target element must make a situational awareness test. If the test is successful, the target will be able to react successfully to incoming and accurate fire that has not become a potential for lethality. However, for every successful situational awareness test, the element will suffer an additional stress. So if you make the test, you gain stress on top of that. 1s are always fail, and any modifier after more than 10 is an automatic fail. This is an exception to the normal rule of 10 always being a success. -2 awareness of the element is being shot from outside their facing. -2 awareness of the operation takes place at night, and the target's not equipped with night vision goggles or thermal optics, and -1 awareness if the target's engaging element is using suppressing weapons. Cover can add to it. All right, so light covers +1, medium covers +2, heavy covers +3 to your situational awareness roll. And then modifiers lethality. If the target element is equipped with body armor, the lethality of the weapon is reduced by 1 unless the weapon has the armor-piercing rule. After the amount of hits is determined, check the lethality value in the correct range for the weapon used, and roll dice equal to the amount of hits rolled. Any dice that equals or exceeds the lethality will have killed a model. So it's almost like, in 40k terms, hits, saves, then wounds, right? So you check the lethality afterwards to see if like the weapon was like, literally lethal enough to kill you. And then stress tests. So stress from engagements. A stress test must be made by any element that was the target of an engagement action and was subject to accurate fire. Roll dice for every accurate shot and additional dice for each model that was killed during the engagement action, and compared the number of failed stress tests to the opponent chart below. You have to go and roll versus your current stress value. So let's say that trained guy that was 5. Any stress that's been applied to the element from the engagement must be carried over. So if you have stress from previous turns, you could be like up to stress like 6, 7. And when making a stress test, roll a d10, and each model in the element making the test, apply any modifiers and compare it to the stress value of the element. Each score that's equal to or over the stress value is a pass. Anything lower is a fail, and a 1 is always a fail. Managing stress in combat is very important. And then however many like results that you got that are failures will then have results based upon what you have here. So if you get 0 fails and you're untrained, you're defiant, the element suffers no effects. 1, you're shocked, the element may only use 1 momentum in any action until its next turn. So like you can't do 2 momentum actions. 2 is suppressed. You can the suppressed state, you only generate a single momentum. 3 to 4 is pinned. 5+ is routed. You have 0 momentum unless they're in a building, and you have to make a maneuver action towards the close table edge. It doesn't require it to move closer to any enemy element. And then trained, it's not quite as bad. It's instead of routed, it's break contact. The element generates 0 momentum. If not inside a building, they must make a maneuver towards the closest table edge. Or doesn't require line of sight or force extraction point if that's being used. So it's just a variation of like, they don't run directly away. They might go towards like an extraction point. And then some core rules for being in buildings, blowing up structures, damaging and destroying the buildings. And then how to make the assault action to like break into something to do a CQB. And that's the core rules. So from there, we get tons of weapon profiles. Like I said, the devil's in the details in this game. They love their weapon profiles because the gear is the point of all of this. And you can see with the miniatures, there's a variety of different guys carrying different firearms. They do class them by type instead of by model or make, so it doesn't get quite that crunchy. And the idea here is that you can do lots of different periods with the various sidearms that are shown off. So like a pistol has various different ranges, and the profile is described in a bunch of different charts. So each engagement range, CQB engagement extreme, will show the 4 values that you'll need to be making engagement ranges. These values are always range, hit modifier, lethality, and AP. So so you've got your range, so 6-inch range for a pistol, hit modifier, so +1 a hit when you're shooting with a pistol, if it's in range. The lethality is a 7+ to kill somebody, and it's AP, which would reduce the situational awareness to hurting people. Machine pistols, right? We have different things here. And the CQB is like going to get you the +1 bonus for that pistol. If you go to just engagement range, which is 10 inches, then there's no mod for the pistol. It's -1 with the machine pistol. It gets less accurate. Extreme range for this is 16 inches. You're -3 to hit with a 10+ lethality. You're just spraying and praying at that point with the pistols or the machine pistols. And then they give some examples of like what this could be. So like a 1911 or a Glock for the pistol, a MAC-10 or an Uzi for the machine pistol. And then special rules, it might have tags. So compact and covert. Compact means it's a sidearm. Covert means that could be used in like sneaky actions. And the machine pistol has the automatic rule for rolling additional dice to hit. So compact SMGs, we got rifles, right? And then like a medium rifle would be like a G36 or an M4. 50 cal rifle, like a 510 Grizzly or a Shack 12. And then like we go on and on and on. There is tons of different guns in here because obviously that is part of the point of this game. Shotguns, thrown weapons, grenade launchers, loitering munitions like anti-armor guns, anti-personnel vehicles, shoulder-fired launchers, right? Heat warheads, high explosive warheads, unguided anti-tank launchers, javelin missiles. They have spared no detail. And then we get cool, weird weapons too, like flamethrowers, bows, crossbows, anti-drone guns, a man-pad, tasers, baton rounds, CS gas, and then crazy things like bomb vests, IEDs, vehicle-mounted weapons, and tank guns, because there is rules for vehicles in here as well. Autocannons, chain guns like a Vulcan cannon or heavy chain gun like a Bushmaster, different drones. And then these are your escalations. So these are the things you can call in during the sit rep phase as you escalate the game. So like surface-to-air missiles, artillery strikes, cluster munitions, chemical weapon strikes. They kind of have thought of everything. And we have all of our tags here. So like automatic, for instance, for that machine pistol. Whenever an additional momentum is spent on an engagement action, add 2 dice to the weapon's engagement rather than 1. If a casualty is caused by an engagement range that includes an automatic weapon, take an additional dice to the target's stress test. Basically, it's like you're spraying bullets at close range. People want to make some freak out. And I'm not going to spend too much time going through all of that. But there's tons of other gear too. Things like Anti-armor weapons, like the special rules like top-down attacks for some guns, inaccurate if they're, just indiscriminate weapons, armor piercing. We talked about that already. Ignore all armor modifiers when rolling for lethality and will negate any benefit for light cover when testing for situational awareness. And we have equipment, and again, all kinds of cool things. If you want to go near future, things like exoskeletons for carrying stuff, respirators, camouflage, different types of body armor, riot shields, ballistic shields, respirators for getting away from that chemical gas, suppressors for your guns that add tags to them, and then specially built weapons. I like this one. So basically, is your weapon tacked out for something different? So like CQB build, sidearms, subguns, shotguns, assault LMGs, they gain the reroll basically for being built for CQB. So if you've like specialized your weapon for a certain role, like a long range build, special scopes and like rangefinders and stuff, or night fighter where you might have like a reflex sight or something like that that's got a level of like night vision on it. Different types of goggles, because why not? Spotter scopes, stuff for snipers, special scope like a gunfire detector or an IED jammer. Camouflage like a ghillie suit, thermal camo, and then breaching tools like explosive entry, like deck cords, or like a lockpick. Different ways of opening doors. And rules for dogs. Once again, the dogs cannot get experience in this game. I feel validated. And then why not take some drugs? Because sometimes people are on drugs. Numbing, stimulants, or cocktails. They classify the drugs in that regard. Different rules for vehicles. And I'm not going to do too much of an overview here, but like you can see they've thought a lot about it and given you examples of it. So cars, pickups, minivans, SUVs. I don't think the Cybertruck's in here. I wish it was. A Bearcat, a BMP or BMP2. And then everything up to like medium heavy vehicles like MRAPs and T90s or Abrams, Challengers. And then the specific rules for running vehicles. They have their own like rules for momentum and maneuvering, because obviously they're way less maneuverable than an infantryman is. And the last section I wanted to go over quickly is the advanced rules and the scenarios. So things like advanced rules are things like fighting at night, awareness. So like if you have like people who are like patrolling, basically they're unaware at the beginning, for like covert actions, methods of deployment, cool weather rules, and optional rules for being wounded, so you're not just killed. The core rules of the game just have like you're taken out of action. When you scale the game down, they give you the option of having like a more Mordheim-y kind of like set of rules for like your injury rolls to make sure that the game lasts a little bit longer. You're not just instantly dead. And then we got our builders for militia forces, task forces, task force tier 2, task force tier 1. And those are designed to be flexible enough to use any nation, any like covert, like group of operations. If you want to do Archer, right, you could do Archer. And have him go on a rampage. He could use the drugs and he could go on a rampage with his cancer drugs, which is just Zima in a bag. And then you get all of your different like resource points, and resource pools are basically how you design your force inside of a given element. And the scenarios might dictate how many resources you're using when you play. And let's quickly look at scenarios and playing linked campaigns, because we have rules for that as well. And we get 5 in here. They're all designed to be sort of like a standard kind of like type of this modern warfare engagement. So like a compound assault, you're fighting asymmetrically. Like some people are inside a building, some people are coming from outside. An ambush where you're unaware at the beginning. Securing intelligence, you're trying to get like an object off the table. Direct engagement, which is the straight up fight. And then sabotage, you're trying to like blow up a bridge, destroy a vehicle, something like that. Yeah, you can see compound assault on a 2x2 or greater table. It'll give you like layouts for playing, like the placing the train, stuff like that, and what the general like results for the game will be that you give your attacker and defender like value. And then your forces are laid out in here too, right? So the attackers can have 2,000 resources to build their strike force with a total force value of 2,000. The defender's gonna have 1,500, and they have to have a commander, but they get 6 free sentries to be patrolling around, which is why they get less overall stuff. But when they escalate, they get reinforcements up to 500 resources from level 1 and level 2. So that's it. Like you can see, it's not just like, this isn't the type of game where like you build your army list and you try and build the best army list. you're going to select from your model pool to play the scenario sort of as described. And we get into some campaign rules. And they'll run through like the idea of playing a campaign where like the linked scenarios will tell a story. And then your losses, right? Because you have people die and some stuff to spend your XP on to level your guys up. And that's it. It's only 2 pages of campaign rules. The campaign isn't the focus, but it allows you to play your games kind of in a linked way. And that's it. Spectre! So what did we think, chat? How are we doing here on this Spectre operations? Afternext says, it's a lot for a PDF. Yeah, well, there you go. It is, they're basically doing the thing where they're charging the same price whether you buy it physically or you buy it digitally. Henry Clark says the description of Cybertruck is hilarious. Yeah, I would agree. Malev says Infinity E. And then Matt says, drop back into the chat like a coked up werewolf with chain guns. Malev says guns, lots of guns. This game does have a lot of guns. Afternext says, can the dogs open doors? I don't think they can take the breaching action, but they could be part of something and take a breaching action. Chris Gibson says dogs can open the doors only if they have lock picks. They might have lock picks. Ruh-roh, drop the tension bar, says Treadhead's Workshop. You could definitely make a Scooby-Doo gang for this game for sure. And It's All Funny Game says it sounds in-depth. It is designed specifically to be a crunchy Modern Warfare game. So if that's the thing that you're interested in, if you're a big Call of Duty fan, if you like that level of crunch, then I do think that there's obviously like a huge model selection to go through that they've made at Spectre. And this game is sort of reflective of pick the models you like, build the force you want, tell the story you want. It's not designed to reflect any certain point like in modern history, but if you're interested in fighting campaigns in that world, then you can. All right. So let's check out Rogue Warriors. This is our paired game, the first. It is a Modern Warfare tabletop skirmish game. Why Rogue Warriors is your next must-play game. Quick to learn, easy to teach, fast setup, solo and co-op plays included. It's miniatures agnostic, era and theater agnostic, and has regular campaign expansions. And all of that is true. This is Rogue Warriors' lovely piece of cover art, and it's written by Lee Fox-Smith and Nicholas Fox-Smith. This is designed to be played. I should say that I want to see who did the cover. It was Lee Fox-Smith, I guess. Photoshop and illustrations. Yep, that's awesome. Great cover. So it's designed to be played in a different theater. So they give you examples of like jungle, Arctic, desert, urban, amphibious, mountain, underground, cyber, and then in different eras as well. So you pick an era, pick a theater, assemble a team of 4 models, give them their specializations and equipment, and then start playing a game. It is very much the most open-ended it could possibly be, but set in Modern Warfare. So you could go post-World War II to Cold War, 20th century, post-Cold War and the War on Terror, modern and future warfare, goes all the way up to like cyber attack prevention, thwart a cyber attack on critical infrastructure, balancing offensive cyber operations with defensive key assets. The idea here being that like if you have a miniature collection of 4 guys and some dudes to fight against, you can use these rules to play that game. Theater of War gives you different mission ideas, like playing in the jungle, playing in the Arctic, the desert, and urban warfare. So like for desert, for instance, convoy operation could be like your mission. In an urban warfare could be hostage rescue in a metropolitan area, or metropolitan area. Why can't I say that word? Or Arctic could be things like an Arctic research station where a thing has gotten loose and they've had to blood test and the whole thing's on fire. Immediately what came to my mind. And then maritime and amphibious stuff could be like an anti-piracy operation. Mountains could be a high altitude recon. Underground and tunnel warfare, things like subterranean facilities sabotage. And then cyber and space warfare, you're trying to blow up a satellite. A moonraker, if you will. All right, and then expertise. So this is one of my favorite things is this game. I always talk about how I like rulebooks that do this. This game is 44 pages, and it jumps right into first pick your miniatures, tell us what they're like, then we put them on the table and play games with them. So you have to pick a theme for your team. What are they here to do? I can only think of Dutch from Predator saying we're a rescue squad. We're not assassins, because hostage rescue is one of the options here. You could be raiders, counterterrorism, hostage rescue, counterinsurgency, covert ops, and reconnaissance. The idea here is that's going to kit out when you pick your specialists what kind of person you are. Every model gets a specialism. So again, to go to the Predator mindset here, Dutch is like a tactician. You've got Billy, who's a scout. You've got fire support with Blaine, right? You've got Mac, who's like the CQB close quarter battle specialist. This is like, his little MP5. I love the idea here of all of this being model based. So you pick a cool miniature, and what does it look like he's doing? That's the specialist you pick for him, and that's going to give you the specific rules for that specialist. And that's it. So pick your miniatures, pick a specialist for them, and build your team. Rogue Warriors is suitable for new players and tabletop veterans alike. We recommend 12 years of up and minimum age. There's thousands of missions in the mission builder here. It's theater agnostic. You pick 4 warriors for each mission, and then you pick the models that you like to play your games with. So assemble a team. The first thing you do is select your expertise. So your stat line is going to be your hearts, hits on, and your MDP, which is your melee dice pool. So how many dice do you roll? You have warriors, enlisted, and recruits whenever you play a game. So first you pick your expertise. So for instance, raiders would have +1 to their move allowance, like they're faster, so they'd move 6 inches instead of 5. Counterterrorism rerolls a shooting attack per round. Must reroll the dice. Hostage rescue, +1 to each roll off to see which warrior team activates first in the next round. Counterinsurgency, -1 of your opponent's activation roll per round. That's once per round after they've already rolled. Covert ops, extend the length and width of the deployment zone by 3 inches. And reconnaissance, reroll an armor save per round. Pick your 4 miniatures, choose their names. They got to get cool names. And then numbers and characteristics. So assign each warrior a number slot, write the designated leader in slot 1 and all other persons in slots 2 to 4. Fill out their starting movement allowance, hearts, hits on, melee dice pool for each of these. And then each table below will give you characteristics for warriors, enlisted, and recruits. So basically the recruits are the lowest stat block guys, and the warriors obviously are the highest. And then give them a specialization. So you could have a warrior who is a tactician. Prior preparation, any team warrior can reroll 1 dice anytime, once per round. Medic, man down, starts with 3 med kits, limited to use of 1 med kit per round. Sniper, 1 shot, 1 kill, +1 to sniper rifle attack rolls if they haven't moved. Hand to hand, knife fighter, reroll 1 melee attack dice per melee combat. Demolitions, Jack Breacher, take 3 grenades in each mission. Feel free to mix and match. EOD, ballistic shield, reroll 1 armor save dice per attack. Comms, drone recon, the team can redeploy 2 warriors when all fighters have been set up. CQB, kill house, reroll 1 shooting attack per activation. Scout, lead the way, +1 move allowance and deploys up to 3 inches outside the deployment zone. And fire support, cover me, spend a shoot action to remove any pin marker from your team once per round. Then equip them, equip your weapons. Each warrior starts with a sidearm pistol, a revolver, and a combat knife. It does not have any effects, but it looks cool. And then choose an extra weapon from the table below. Make note of what's weapons characteristics. So you've always got a pistol or revolver, and then you get one of these other things, like a shotgun, submachine gun, assault rifle, light machine gun, sniper rifle, melee weapon, frag grenade, and then give gear. You may take 5 points of gear, so they have like a point cost. Cooler gear might cost more points. You get some rope for no falling damage, NVGs for +1 to shooting attacks in the dark, suppressors for the silent rule on your gun. Smoke grenades, frag grenades, flashbang grenades, and these are free for the guy who's the demolitions dude. Med kits would cost you 3, so you can have other med kits than just on the medic. Ghillie suits cost you 5. Deploy anywhere on the map more than 9 from the enemy. And RPG, use frag grenade rules, but extend the range to 18 inches. And then your mission team sheets. Here's an example. Alpha 2 Bravo with Axel. He has a movement of 5, hearts of 6, hits on a 4+, and a melee dice pool of 5. His specialization is he's a leader, and then he's got a prior preparation. Any team warrior can reroll 1 dice per round. He's got his melee combat with an axe, and then med kits, he can heal a heart. Rex has got fire support. Gypsy has scout, and then Bill has CQB. And prepare to play. The game's usually played on a 3x3, so 36x36. You can play it on a smaller 2x2 or 22x30 if you want, but it'll get a lot quicker, they say. I'd probably play it on two 22 by 30s and do 44 by 30, which is just it's this almost the same square footage or square inches, but like just weirdly shaped. Put down some terrain, use buildings. Like it's going to be fun to move inside because the game is in that kind of like theme. And then read the mission brief. The missions will be later on in the generator. Place your objectives. And then what else will you need? Some terrain, a measuring gauge, 6-sided dice, at least 6 to 12, tokens for your hearts, pins, and activation markers. A scatter dice would be useful, like a D20 that faces up top, and then 4 to 10 models, 4 warriors for each player. And then common terms are your players, your warriors. A warrior is a soldier who's part of your team. All your guys are warriors at the beginning. The other stat lines are for non-player characters, solo stuff. And then missions, which is the like objectives you're playing for. If you're playing a campaign, where that mission fits in. If you're playing PvP, player versus player. If you're taken out, you've lost all your hearts. And then perks, special abilities that you can perform based on your expertise. And there are ways to play. I love that you can play this player versus player, swarm mode, where your team is fighting against a bunch of like bad guys rushing in. Solo or co-op, and then cooperative and narrative. And all of these will have the ability to like mix and match. So you can do like a narrative campaign that was solo. Win conditions. A team will win a mission when they meet a winning condition. Some examples could be things like objective control, elimination, kill a specific model, exit point, get off the table, points accumulation, get the most points to win, survival, like survive set rounds like in Swarm, King of the Hill, can maintain control of a key location on the map, retrieval, capture and move an item or NPC to a specific location, resource depletion, achieve when one player runs out of their essential resource, breakout, exit the battlefield, and once you scenario complete, they must have to like a thing like blow up a bridge or, steal a car or whatever that ends up being. All right, key concepts. If you've played skirmish games before, then following key concepts should probably be pretty familiar. So dice, roll d6s, and if you add to a dice roll, then you roll it as d6 plus 2 or subtract d6 minus 2. Sometimes you'll be asked to roll a d3, roll it and have it. A d2 is roll it and 1 to 3 is a 1, and 4 to 6 is a 2. Ones are always failures if it's a natural 1, and then on target, a natural 6 will always hit. Roll-offs, when you roll off a dice to try and dispute an argument of a rule or something like that, then whoever gets the higher wins, and you reroll until somebody does. And then rerolls, you can't reroll a reroll. Measure edge to edge for measurements. And then action packages. Now, I like this term, action packages, from a design point of view, because it's neat and it's easy to remember. There's 5 action packages here, and they're basically move and shoot, move and melee attack, move and run, aim and shoot, and then melee attack. If in base contact, you make a melee attack. You got to pick one when you activate. You do a sit rep. When you activate a warrior, you declare the action package you're going to choose from, then declare each action before they carry it out. Sit rep is designed to be like, I like this as a term. Sit rep means describe what they're doing. Don't just say, I move and shoot. Say, he's going to move over here, and then he's going to shoot his gun at this guy. And the more cinematic you get it, the rules are encouraging you to kind of be storytelling in the way you describe things. And then if you're in base contact, certain packages can only be taken. You can take cover as a reaction. If you haven't activated yet, instead of choosing an action package later on, you can move an inch in a direction. And then once they take cover, they can no longer activate that round. So it does, if you're like stuck out in the open, you can take cover as a reaction to try and get like out of the wind. And then universal actions. You have access to universal actions like pick up and drop off and pass. They're just things you can do while you're in base contact with the appropriate item or model. Movement. There is no pre-measuring in this game. You got to say where you're going and then do it. The idea is that you're guessing and estimating distances in a super skirmish like this is important. Friendly models can be moved through, but enemies can't. Base contact, moving to base. Stand freely. You have to move to a point where you can fit your base at the end of your move. And then obstacles less than an inch can be moved over as normal, but anything over an inch will slow you down and you get your movement reduced. You can climb and do like tricky terrain, like get up on ledges and stuff, but you have to use the special rules to do so and move at half rate. And then pinned. During a shooting attack, warriors can become pinned. If making an armor save that results in a pin, place a pin marker next to them. Use a colored token to represent it. Note that warriors can only be given one pin marker at a time, and that warriors with the pin marker cannot move during their next activation. When they've carried out the next activation, remove the pin marker. So basically it takes the move out of any of your action packages. And then description of all the actions. So movement, move your movement allowance. If you run, you add D6 to it. Swimming, jumping, falling, standing up, and sliding can have additional movements that cost you part of your core move. And then line of sight. The line can be drawn from any obstruction. The target is in line of sight when the attacking model can attack them. It's not obvious if the target's in line of sight. Crouch down and look. Different types of cover here are described. So like if you cannot see more than half, then -1 the attack roll. If you see way less than half, -2 to the attack roll, and then roll off if you disagree on the percentage. All right. Actual accuracy. So shooting your guns. All shooting attacks hit on 4s. You can be modified by light, heavy cover, and aiming and being inside half range of your gun. When you attack, designate the target, measure the range, and shoot to see if it's range. So like your gun will have a specific range. The attack characteristic of the gun will give you your dice pool, and then try and roll your target number based upon the situation. And if you hit, go to the armor saves. For each hit, roll a d6, apply any modifiers from any perks, and the weapon's armor piercing roll. On a 1 to 3, and this is kind of like the Mordheim damage table. Your armor saves are 1 to 2, take a damage, lose a heart. 3 to 4, you're pinned and can't move next activation. 5 to 6, your armor protects them and you're totally fine. So rolling low is bad, and the AP of the gun will reduce it all the time. The idea here is your armor save is kind of like a universal rule that everyone has, and it represents like your ability to get behind cover, take a hit to like your plating if you have plating on you, and whatever other survival like strategies you're using for the period and setting you're playing in. Armor piercing will reduce the dice roll, obviously, if you have that stat. And then melee attacks. This might seem familiar to some of you. This is a paired dice pool for doing melee attacks. You roll your pool and then you pair them highest to lowest. And I love this example over here, where you see who takes damage. Because no matter what happens, you might take damage. So in this case, green is attacking red. Whenever you make an attack as the attacker, you get +1 dice. So it's almost guaranteed if you have more dice than your opponent, you're going to get at least 1 point of damage because there'll be 1 unopposed dice. But then you rank your dice highest to lowest and you pair them up. So in this case, you can see the 2 6s beat the 5 and the 4. This 4 beats 1 of the 3s. This 3 ties and it's a draw, which means no damage at all. But the 3 and the 1 both win against nothing. So in this case, green does 3 damage, red does 2 damage. And even though green attacked, its top dice got blocked there and they still got some hits through. You get bonuses, obviously, if the target's got more than 1 guy in combat with them. And the attacker can add 1 dice to their NDP for each attacker-friendly warrior-based contact with the target. And that's it for the core actions. We get some cool missions in the mission generator, and how you start a mission. So you choose a mission, you either do a one-shot, there's tons of free missions and content for this game too. Select your warriors, you assemble your team just like at the beginning, set the battlefield, and then roll off for deployment and start playing. And that's it. When you activate, a mission will have an unlimited number of rounds unless specified in the mission brief. In each round, all models must be activated and carry out their actions. And then activations, warriors will activate 1 at a time, alternating in an I go, you go fashion. Alternating activation continues until everyone's been activated. So you go back to back warrior to warrior. And then in the end of the mission, if you've got your objective, if it's specified that it goes to a certain round or if a win condition's been achieved. And if you're in a campaign, you roll the post-game sequence. Designing missions. So you roll for your insertion, your benefit, and your negative. So like, for instance, if you roll small boat is how you're inserted, you then roll the benefit that you have stealthy maritime close to shore and insertion. But the negative is you have a limited payload and slow. So each of like these insertion types will give you a bunch of different like bonuses and penalties to your actual mission. And then you've got a D66 table here for what you're actually trying to do. So Arctic Research Siege on a 13, the location, you roll again. It could be a hamlet, then you roll again. You're trying to retrieve, and then you roll again. From a room, the enemy is going to be a kidnapper. Deployment is one of the deployment styles you'll see later on. So like November, Oscar, Papa, Quebec, Romeo. And then the win condition could be like objective control, elimination, get to an exit point. And there's thousands of different variations here and thousands of different deployments that you're going to roll for. And I love that. Look at all these deployments. Quebec, Tango, Sierra, I like the NATO phonetic deployment styles too. And here's some like pre-generated ones to give you some examples to play through. So if you want to play these, they're all different eras and stuff as well. So like this one, for instance, is this is the blank one, sorry. This one right here is May of 1943, restricted. Engage swarm mode, hold position, survive until reinforcements arrive. It's an urban war zone. Action is hold the tactical position. Survive as long as you can. The enemy's recruits and the rounds are unlimited. It's vital to hold this position and stop the enemy from overwhelming it. Reinforcements are en route, but are encountering resistance. Hold and repel. And the idea here is you are just trying to fight against a horde. Player 1's Warrior Team 1. Player 2 is the Recruit Swarm in red. And the player 2 will get their own like forces described to them with like a stat block and stuff as well. And that could be rolled straight out of that chart. So these are just examples of like what you could be playing. You get your mission sheet, a objective sheet for rolling up a mission, and a quick ref. And that's it. So there we go. Rogue Warriors. What did the chat think of that one? Nope, they're just talking about Scooby-Doo. And Ryan W said, now I need to see Moonraker minis again. That was the best Bond movie. Yeah, go to 7 TV. They will absolutely have Moonraker minis. And then last but not least, like I said earlier, we have War Eternal. This is available. This was printed through Amazon by Dan, who is a patron. And if you want to check it out, you can check it out there. It'll be linked in the video description. It's just $9 and is a nice 40-page rulebook. It's very similar to Rogue Warriors. It has a stat block for, again, class-based troops. So an XO, a sergeant, a trooper, shock troops, marines, snipers, rangers, medics, war dogs, ignoble bastards. And then you kit them out in a very similar way, and they get their perks in a very similar way. You got a whole bunch of different like biohazards and stuff, and a nice little campaign system as well. And then 6 scenarios. We have At First Light, These Colors Don't Run, Drowning in Mud, Bury Me in a Nameless Grave, Trample the Weak, Hurdle the Dead, and Marines. So just a little bonus content there for you if you guys are looking for another indie skirmish game. And it's written by one of our patrons, which I thought would be fun to check out. So yeah, we did it, guys. We did another one of these. Now, if you haven't watched an Indie Hour before, these are all picked by patrons. We have a poll every single week where one of these gets like put up. We have 25 options usually of various indie games. Patrons can nominate indie games. We have several game designers. Well, actually, probably like a couple dozen game designers in there. Some you've probably definitely heard of, and some who are in the chat right now, who will put up their own games sometimes as well. And every week we select one. I pair it with an appropriate other game, either from that same pool of selections or something that I just have heard about from the web, like for instance, Dan's game, War Eternal, for people to check out. So if you want to get in that, you can jump in on Patreon and pick the one for next week. As you're watching this live on YouTube, we are usually recording the following one. So this will be a week early because we record it live with the patrons and take some stuff from the chat from them. And then the one that we did the previous week will be airing live on YouTube for everyone else to check out. So if you want to check out these games, they'll be linked in the video description. And we'll have, another new, hopefully themed next week for you guys to check out. And a whole new game. So until then, have a great week. We'll see you for more Indie Hour. And go check out these games. Bye, everybody.